Mr. President, I am disappointed that the Panamanian presidency, ignoring the requests of most members of the Security Council, including the Russian Federation, to convene the next meeting immediately, decided to hold it only today, despite the extremely dangerous development of events on the occupied Palestinian territory as a result of the decision announced by the Israeli leadership on the escalation of hostilities in the Gaza Strip, which is preventing its occupation. We are grateful to the Assistant to the Secretary General of the UN, Miroslav Jenč, and to the head of the KGB branch in Geneva, Ramesh Resenham, for the report. Recently, the world learned the shocking news that the military-political cabinet of the ministers of the Benjamin Netanyahu government has decided to bring the troops to Gaza and put the sector under total control of the Israeli security forces in order to, as the Israeli cabinet said, defeat Hamas.
These actions of the Israeli leadership are grossly violating international law, demonstrating its open neglect of both the calls of the international community and the decisions of the UN Security Council, and have a very serious impact on the prospects of a bilateral solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. We strongly condemn the intention of the Netanyahu government to capture Gaza. We join in this context the calls to Western Jerusalem to abandon such extremely dangerous steps, undermining the fragile prospects of peaceful settlement of the Middle East conflict. We insist on the unwavering compliance with Israel, the norms of international law, and the well-known BWU legal base, including the professional resolution of the UN Security Council and the General Assembly. We also remind that the Israeli plans are in line with the UN consultative conclusion from July 19, 2024, which, among other things, unambiguously requires Western Jerusalem to immediately put an end to the occupation of the Palestinian lands. In addition, the adoption of such a plan essentially means the official and public recognition of Israel of the task of capturing and occupying the enclave. As is well known, after the demarcation of Gaza by the Israeli government in 2005, the Israeli leadership claimed that there was no state of occupation, which did not correspond to international legal interpretations taking into account the Israeli control over the perimeter of the sector, its airspace, and the sea. It turns out that Israel has carried out and is now increasing the occupation regime with all the obligations to protect and provide the civilian population with the necessary character, and should not depend on the wishes of the occupying party, which is provided by the norms and principles of international humanitarian law, including the Fourth Geneva Convention. Mr. Chairman, just a few days ago, here in the walls of the Council, we discussed the situation around the Israeli hostages in Gaza in detail. Most of the members of the Security Council clearly and unambiguously stated that one of the main prerequisites for the release of all hostages is an immediate and unconditional ceasefire. It was thanks to the cessation of bloodshed and active diplomacy and the reckless activation of hostilities that more than 140 people. Unfortunately, in Western Jerusalem once again, we did not listen to the calls of the world majority, to the voices of Israel, or to the relatives of the hostages. Instead of a negotiation process, the Israeli authorities took a course for further escalation of violence, thus putting the safety and life of the Israeli hostages under threat, who were, as we have seen, in unbearable conditions, aggravated by a sharp shortage of food and water in Gaza. It turns out that the Israeli Ministry of Justice, which has been among us since August 5th, who hypocritically shed crocodile tears in this hall about the fate of the Israeli hostages, already knew that the Israeli cabinet would soon make a similar decision, in fact, overshadowing the prospect of their return alive. Apparently, it was important for Mr. Saar to prepare the ground and promote the media picture of allegedly solidarity and sympathy of the members of the Security Council in order to then continue to kill the Palestinians. Such an attempt to manipulate the Security Council for internal Israeli purposes simply does not make sense. Just as it does not make sense how the Jewish people, who faced the Holocaust in the years of World War II, can now put the Palestinians in the ghetto and seek their complete destruction. How quickly history is forgotten. It is obvious that the implementation of the Israeli leadership's plans to completely clear the enclave will only further complicate the humanitarian situation in Gaza. In fact, new mass forced migration, which means the suffering of the civilian population, new victims, and rapid floods. Given how the conflict is developing in Gaza, we have no reason to believe the public statements of the Israeli authorities about the intention to provide the civilian population with everything they need outside the combat zones. The methods that Israel uses to distribute food are well known. They are inhumane, contradict the norms of the MGP, and only lead to the death of the civilian population. This, in particular, clearly confirms the activities of the so-called Humanitarian Fund for Gaza. More than 1,500 Palestinians have already been killed. It should not be forgotten that the planned plans to move civilians to the Gaza Strip in the event of a war, as well as to use hunger as a weapon, can be qualified as war crimes and crimes against humanity. In addition, such actions may fall under Article 2, Paragraph C of the Convention on the Prevention of the Crime of Genocide and Punishment for it from 1948, which Israel ratified in 1950. Mr. Chairman, in conclusion, I would like to note that the day before yesterday, Benjamin Netanyahu said in an interview to one of the American TV channels about the intention to create an alternative administration in Gaza that would provide the Gazans with a different future. Such an administration, according to Netanyahu, will not be Palestinian. This, in turn, contradicts the widely recognized international legal understanding of the Gaza Strip as an integral part of the future Palestinian state. On our part, we propose to think about historical questions. What kind of future can people have under the occupation? What should their relatives who have lost more than 60,000 people say to them? How many more Palestinians will have to die before this inhuman massacre comes to an end? And how many more will be closed by those who consistently support Israel and do not allow the Security Council to act? On our part, we consistently support the diplomatic settlement of the Palestinian issue on the basis of the two-state formula for two nations that will satisfy the legitimate concerns of Israel in the sphere of security as well as the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people for their own state. The alternative to this is the death of tens of thousands of innocent people, including the Israeli hostages that have been held for almost 2 years. The UN Security Council simply must not allow such a scenario. I hope that this will soon be realized in Washington. For now, as we understand, despite the assurances of the State Department about the continuation of the real and serious diplomatic efforts to end the suffering in Gaza, to free the hostages, and to achieve a permanent peace, the United States simply washes its hands and gives West Jerusalem carte blanche for complete freedom of action in Gaza.